The British monarch has given her blessing for Prince Charles' wife, Camilla, to be called Queen Consort.
At 75, King Charles has reached his breaking point, and now the royal silence is finally shattered. After decades of whispers, scandal, and carefully guarded secrets, the monarch is exposing the truth about the woman who stood by his side, Queen Camilla. But this isn't a love story. It's a tale of betrayal, hidden agendas, and missing royal treasures. Shocking new revelations suggest Camilla may have played a far more cunning role than anyone ever imagined, including stealing the king's own jewels. But what really happened behind palace walls? Let's uncover everything. Unfolding royal scandal. When Camilla first took on the role of Queen Consort, it seemed like she would follow in the traditional footsteps of royal spouses before her. She stood gracefully beside the king, carried out ceremonial duties, and was expected to remain in the background, dignified, supportive, and silent. But that didn't last. Over time, something began to change. Camilla started showing up alone at public events. She gave interviews, sometimes without warning or permission from the king or his most senior advisors. She began speaking for herself and acting independently. At first, it seemed subtle, but to those watching closely, it was clear. Camilla was stepping beyond the boundaries of her expected role. She wasn't just playing the part of a royal companion anymore. She was becoming a royal force in her own right. Then came a change that raised eyebrows all across the monarchy. The royal family's official website quietly updated Camilla's title. She was no longer listed as Queen Consort. Now she was simply Queen. To the outside world, this might have looked like a minor update, but in the royal family, where titles are everything and tradition is sacred, this was no small matter. It was a bold shift that challenged Queen Elizabeth II's final wishes. The late monarch had made it clear Camilla was to be Queen Consort, not Queen. And while Charles had supported Camilla in many ways, sources say he was not entirely comfortable with this title change. He knew what his mother had intended, and agreeing to the new title may have felt like turning his back on her legacy. This change didn't just stir tension inside the palace. It symbolized something far deeper. Camilla wasn't just rising in name. She was rising in influence, in authority, and in ambition. Camilla's growing independence didn't stop at symbolic gestures. She began making real decisions, ones that directly affected the king himself. According to palace insiders, she started altering King Charles's schedule, canceling appointments she felt didn't fit with her vision for the monarchy. When palace aides questioned her, her response was unapologetic. "It will do him no good. The queen knows best," she allegedly declared. That statement hit hard. It showed how confident, some say arrogant, she had become. She wasn't just supporting the king. She was making decisions without him. To some, it looked like Camilla was slowly taking control of the monarchy's direction, bit by bit. But the real shock came when Camilla granted a secret interview without telling King Charles. No one, especially not the king, saw it coming. In that interview, Camilla didn't hold back. She spoke openly about her ideas for the future of the monarchy. She outlined new plans, bold strategies, and shared visions for the royal family, plans that had never been made public before. The most devastating part was that many of the things she talked about were based on private conversations she had with King Charles, things he had shared with her in confidence, things he never expected to be revealed on national television. For Charles, it was a betrayal beyond words. He had trusted Camilla not only as his wife, but as his closest confidant. To hear his personal hopes, plans, and fears discussed so openly was like having his heart torn out in public. For a man who had always valued privacy, who had always kept his thoughts carefully guarded, this was nothing short of humiliation. That interview was the moment everything changed. It wasn't just a misstep. It was a breach of royal trust, a crossing of the line from partnership into ambition. The king, sources say, was devastated. He had been patient with Camilla's growing influence. He had tried to accommodate her need for space and a voice of her own. This felt like a coup from within. He had always believed that their bond, tested through years of public scrutiny and private trials, was unshakable. But now, that belief was in pieces. Behind the closed doors of Buckingham Palace, a fierce argument erupted between the king and queen, a confrontation that many believe may have changed their relationship forever. So, what's really going on inside the House of Windsor? Are cracks beginning to show? Let's find out. Growing rift between King Charles and Camilla. The growing tension between King Charles and Camilla could no longer be ignored. Their relationship, once carefully managed in the public eye, was now cracking wide open. It was time for Charles to confront her face to face, to demand answers, to hold her accountable. This wasn't just a private matter anymore. The very future of their relationship, and perhaps even the stability of the monarchy, was hanging by a thread. The breaking point came after Camilla's shocking interview aired. It wasn't just controversial, it was explosive. Overnight, trust inside the palace collapsed like a house of cards. The next morning, a heavy silence fell over Buckingham Palace. Everyone could feel it. The tension in the air was thick and unnerving. Camilla had not returned to the palace the night before. Her absence wasn't just noticed, it was alarming. She was never one to miss royal protocol, especially during a crisis. As the minutes turned into hours, King Charles grew increasingly agitated. Already burdened by public pressure and royal responsibilities, he now looked visibly shaken. According to palace insiders, the king paced the corridors non-stop, his footsteps echoing off the marble floors. His usual composure was gone. Staff members whispered among themselves, too nervous to intervene. Something was clearly very wrong. Charles had ordered Camilla to return to the palace the moment he learned what she had said in the interview. But she didn't respond, not a single word. He waited, sent messages, tried to reach her in every way he could. Still, nothing. The situation escalated when Charles was seen outside on the palace grounds, his phone in hand, either waiting for her car to appear or desperately firing off more messages. The man who usually ruled with calm dignity now looked like someone on the edge, frustrated, betrayed, and very much alone. The one person he had counted on the most, his queen, was now the one causing him the most pain. When Camilla finally arrived the next morning, the atmosphere in the palace shifted. Staff who saw her walk in said she held her head high, her face cold and unreadable. She didn't return anyone's greetings. She moved like someone walking into battle, not a reunion. She made her way to the meeting room where Charles was waiting. Every step echoed like a drumbeat. When she entered, her posture was stiff, her expression steely. It was obvious from the moment she walked in, this was not going to be a calm conversation. Charles stood in the middle of the room, eyes locked on her. His face was tight with emotion, and his hands trembled slightly. Then, without wasting a second, he let it all out. His voice shook, not just with anger, but with pain. He told her this was not how royalty behaved, that the monarchy wasn't a platform for personal ambition. He reminded her that every word spoken in public carried weight, and her actions had consequences. But the part that hit hardest was when he spoke of betrayal. He told her she had broken his trust, and in that moment, the pain was clear in his eyes. Camilla didn't back down. She didn't apologize. If anything, she stood even taller. Her voice was calm, her tone defiant. She said she had done nothing wrong. She reminded him that she was the queen now, and that gave her the right to speak her truth. Her words were like ice. They stunned Charles into silence for a moment, but only for a moment. What had been boiling under the surface for months finally erupted. Charles exploded in a burst of rage and hurt that had clearly been building inside him for far too long. His voice rose, shaking with emotion, echoing off the palace walls. It wasn't just about the interview anymore. This was about years of tension, silent resentments, and wounds that had never healed. It was now about his jewelry. "Who took my ring?" he demanded, his voice slicing through the thick silence like a blade. His eyes locked onto hers, burning with accusation and disbelief. The story of King Charles and Queen Camilla is not just a royal romance. It's a complicated and emotional journey that has spanned decades, filled with controversy, pain, and deep personal wounds. Their relationship is always played out under the watchful eyes of the public and the ruthless spotlight of the press. Beneath the surface of royal ceremonies and official smiles lies a history marked by sorrow, betrayal, and unresolved pain. At the heart of their troubled history is the way the media treated Camilla. For years, she was cast as the villain in the royal love triangle involving Charles, his first wife, Princess Diana, and the monarchy. The press showed her no mercy. Tabloids painted her as the woman who wrecked Charles and Diana's already strained marriage. Camilla was blamed for Diana's heartbreak, and her name became a symbol of betrayal. The public joined in, turning their anger on her. This constant criticism took a heavy toll on Camilla. Every move she made, every appearance she gave was picked apart by the press. She became the target of intense scorn, and behind the palace walls, she suffered deeply. According to royal insiders, Camilla often felt utterly alone. The one person she believed would stand by her, Charles, didn't do enough to shield her from the media's attacks. Camilla had expected Charles, her partner and future king, to defend her more fiercely, to use his power to protect her image and her dignity. But time and again, she was left alone to face the public's fury. This feeling of abandonment sank deep into her heart. Despite eventually marrying Charles and becoming queen consort, those wounds never truly healed. Even now, years later, royal watchers say the pain still lingers. There may be smiles for the cameras, but behind the scenes, the emotional scars remain. Camilla's quiet resentment and Charles's guilt over the past have never been properly dealt with. And as time passed, those buried emotions started to resurface. In recent months, a new wave of tension has swept through the palace. Rumors and whispers began to circulate within royal circles. People started noticing changes in Camilla, a growing confidence, a louder voice, and a bolder presence. Some believe she's no longer satisfied with playing a supporting role. The turning point came when Camilla gave an unusually bold interview where she openly spoke her mind on royal matters, something rarely done by someone in her position.
I've been actually trying to keep quiet about reaching 3/4 of a century.
This raised eyebrows and stirred debate. Was she positioning herself for more influence? Was she stepping into a role that could rival even Charles's? Not only that, but several recent royal decisions bore her unmistakable influence. Some insiders say she began bypassing long-held traditions and protocols, acting more independently. The palace, once tightly controlled by the king's advisors, now seemed to be reflecting her choices as well. Naturally, this shift did not go unnoticed by King Charles. Sources say he began to feel pushed aside, as if the crown he waited his whole life to wear was slowly slipping out of his hands. He reportedly took steps to reassert his authority and remind everyone that he was still the monarch, the true head of the British royal family. So, what's the real story behind the ring? Let's dive in and find out. King Charles's pinky ring. The ring King Charles spoke of was no ordinary piece of jewelry. It wasn't just some fancy decoration made of gold and gemstones. This was the king's personal signet ring, a deeply important item that symbolized his power, royal bloodline, and leadership. It wasn't just valuable. It was priceless, carrying the weight of centuries of tradition. Losing it would be devastating, not only for Charles personally, but also for the image and history of the British monarchy itself. This ring, worn on his pinky finger, had become a quiet yet powerful symbol of royal identity. Known as a royal heirloom, it wasn't just about fashion or elegance, it was about legacy, pride, and the unbroken thread connecting generations of kings and princes. Charles had been wearing this ring since the 1970s. Over the years, it became a part of him, a visible mark of his place in the long story of British royalty. The ring was crafted from Welsh gold, a rare and traditional material used for royal jewelry for over a century. It weighed around 20 grams and was engraved with the official crest of the Prince of Wales, a title that once belonged to Charles and now belongs to his eldest son, Prince William. Every detail of the ring, from its gold to its emblem, reflected a deep commitment to royal customs and the responsibilities of the crown. But there was more to this ring than history and tradition. For Charles, it had deep emotional meaning. It wasn't just a symbol of his duty, it was a connection to his family and his past, especially to his late father. The ring had been passed down from Prince Philip, who had inherited it from his own father, Prince Andrew of Greece and Denmark. So this wasn't just Charles's ring. It had belonged to the men who shaped him, advised him, and passed on the burden of kingship. It was a piece of his heart, worn on his hand. That's why its loss, whether by accident or theft, would be more than a royal scandal. It would feel like a piece of history being torn away. It would mean the loss of a powerful symbol of identity, connection, and duty. It would send shockwaves through Charles's private world and shake the palace walls with unease. This ring, though small, tied together 3 generations of royalty. For Prince Philip, it was a reminder of his noble roots. For Charles, it was a link to his father and to the royal legacy he was born to uphold. And now, for Prince William, it holds the weight of expectation. As the future king, William may one day wear this very same ring, continuing its story into a new era. But if the ring were truly gone, lost, or taken, that story would be interrupted. The bond between the past and the future would be broken. And for a king who values heritage as deeply as Charles does, such a loss would not just be painful, it would be heartbreaking. Now, who stole the king's ring, or did it just vanish? Let's take a closer look. Mysterious disappearance of the ring. After the grand celebration of King Charles's long-awaited coronation, something deeply unsettling happened, a mystery that would shake the royal household to its core. The world had watched in wonder as Charles was officially crowned, with all the splendor and tradition that only a British royal event could bring. But behind the glittering crown and golden robes, a quiet storm was beginning to build. In the days that followed the historic ceremony, palace staff made a shocking discovery. The king's prized pinky ring had vanished without a trace. This wasn't just any piece of jewelry. It was a powerful royal emblem, a symbol of his authority and heritage, worn by generations before him. Its sudden disappearance sparked confusion and disbelief throughout Buckingham Palace. King Charles, known for his calm and reserved demeanor in public, was visibly shaken. According to palace insiders, he was nearly in a panic. He couldn't understand how something so important could simply disappear. The loss of the ring wasn't just symbolic. It seemed to strike at the heart of his identity as monarch. It was as if a piece of his very soul had been taken from him. As the king struggled with his emotions, the palace was thrown into chaos. Security teams and trusted aides began an urgent and thorough search. Every hallway, every chamber, every garden and vault was inspected from top to bottom. But the days dragged on, and still there was no sign of the missing ring. The pressure mounted with each passing hour. Secret meetings were held behind closed doors. Tensions rose. Whispers filled the marble halls. Rumors began to swirl like a storm over London. Some speculated that the ring had been quietly sold off, perhaps by someone within the palace looking to profit from the moment. Others whispered of betrayal, suspecting that it may have been stolen by someone close to the royal family, someone who had easy access to the king's private quarters and knew exactly when to strike. While King Charles was consumed with worry, there was one person in the palace who seemed strangely unaffected by the crisis: Queen Camilla. Instead of showing concern or offering comfort, she went about her royal duties as if nothing had happened. She made bold decisions on state matters, hosted events, and appeared in public with a smile, all while ignoring the emotional toll the mystery was taking on her husband. Behind the scenes, her cold detachment did not go unnoticed. Some insiders said she seemed almost relieved, perhaps even empowered, by the king's moment of vulnerability. She didn't just ignore the missing ring. She acted as if it were a trivial matter, unworthy of her attention. But then came the interview. It had been planned as a public relations effort, a moment to show unity and strength as a royal couple. But what happened during that televised exchange did the opposite. Camilla's tone, her comments, her body language, everything about her performance seemed to mock the seriousness of the situation. She crossed a line, and King Charles knew it. Already frayed by the stress and mystery, the king's patience snapped. Behind the palace doors, a fierce and emotional argument erupted between the two.
To the right, everybody please.
The ring's disappearance, once seen as just a strange event, had now become the trigger for a much deeper conflict, one that had been hiding in the shadows for years. But why did Camilla take the ring? Will she ever return it? Let's find out. Charles and Camilla's breaking point. One of the most dramatic moments in this growing power struggle came during the height of media attention following Camilla's media chat. King Charles demanded the return of his prized pinky ring, a treasured piece of jewelry filled with deep personal and royal significance. According to palace insiders, what followed was an explosive confrontation. Charles, overwhelmed with frustration, accused Camilla directly. His voice trembled with anger as he claimed he had proof she had taken the ring. He demanded its return, without delay. Camilla didn't respond immediately. She narrowed her eyes, quietly taking in his words. Then, with a calmness that stunned even the king, she said coldly, "What belongs to the king is mine." Her words weren't just defiant, they were a declaration, a claim to power. She then reached into her purse, pulled out the missing ring, and placed it on the table before him, as if to say she'd had it all along. Seeing the ring returned so casually only fueled Charles's fury. His face turned red with rage. He had expected a denial, or at least an excuse. Instead, he got a quiet challenge. Overwhelmed with emotion, he shouted, "You are done!" The anger in his voice was unmistakable. A breaking point had been reached. But Camilla didn't shout back. She didn't argue. She turned around and walked out of the room, leaving Charles behind in stunned silence. For years, people close to the royal family had sensed cracks in Charles and Camilla's relationship. But now, it seems the dam has finally burst. What was once a fragile alliance built on shared history has fractured. Some royal insiders believe this may be the moment from which there is no return. According to some sources, Camilla had long been fascinated by the ring. It wasn't just a royal treasure. It carried deep emotional value. She had asked for it many times, viewing it as a mark of her growing place in the monarchy. But Charles refused. To him, it was more than jewelry. It was part of his identity, tied to memories, tradition, and his role as king. This rejection may have pushed Camilla to take matters into her own hands. Taking the ring wasn't a theft in her mind. It was a statement, a quiet, powerful act showing that she no longer needed permission to take what she believed was rightfully hers. But by doing so, she crossed a dangerous line, one between trust and betrayal. The ring, though small, carried the weight of years of shared history and unspoken conflict. And now, it has become the spark that ignited a royal firestorm. In the days following the confrontation, Queen Camilla reportedly stepped back from public royal duties. The palace remained silent, refusing to comment. So, what do you think about King Charles's surprising revelation about Queen Camilla? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.